lovely webcam. Hello to everyone there.
Hi,
put the right hand up. I know so far we haven't got many on, so we're going to wait a couple of minutes just to make sure everyone's okay. Sonata, I can see you've just raised your hand, which is wonderful. You've already got fantastic use of the software here. We're going to just wait a few minutes just for a couple of people just to pop on, and then we'll get absolutely truly started. In the meantime, if you've got any questions, please feel free to just explore some of the technology we've got here. So down in the bottom left, you see for some people, if you're not on a mobile phone, but if you're on a computer, you'll see, or you still see it if you're on a mobile phone, it's just a little bit more difficult to use. You see the chat panel there, so ask us a question. In the top right-hand corner, we've got our presentation. So there we go. If I put the hands right over David's head, we've got the Preparing for Success. We are today going to be running alongside it a little bit of technology. So a website, it's to help basically make this as interactive as possible. We've got a Menti sort of quiz and presentation. Now what this means is as we go through the presentation, you guys will be able to put in information. So we'll be asking you a series of questions and you'll be able to tell us a little bit of details about you, about where you're in your studies, and also pose us any questions as we go through. So don't worry about that. We'll push that through and we'll inform you along the way. But if you browse to and go to menti.com up the top there and use the code 434692, it will just be a straight PIN code. You'll be able to then launch into the premise. In fact, if I just give you a little bit more information at the top there whilst we're kind of waiting for people, these are the instructions here. So alongside sort of browsers on a computer, you can even do this if you're on a phone. Of course, you just need to use a different browser on your phone, but you can go to menti.com and then just put in the 3-digit code. Your 3-digit codes are 434692. So if you throw that info in, we should be absolutely fine. Okay, Sonata, I can see you did have your hand up. Hopefully everything's okay with you. Could you just let us know if you can hear us okay? Would that be okay? Just to absolutely double check that everyone's okay. If anyone can throw in. Online, we've also got Lizzie, who's a representative for First Intuition. So she will be throwing in bits of responses. She'll be monitoring the chat panel just in case we miss anything. But I hope to be able to address any questions as they go through on the chat panel, as they're going through. Fantastic. Lizzie's got perfect things. Okay. Right, okay, well, let's get started and let's get moving on. So, today, firstly, I want to introduce the person to my left here is David. David is the Managing Director of our Chelmsford branch. He started out from scratch. How many years ago now, David?
When I trained, or when
We'll start at the centre.
Started at the centre 7-8 years ago. We're in our 8th year.
7-8 years ago, and you qualified?
Far too long ago, but about 15 years ago. 15
years ago. Myself, I'm Christian Pamworth. I work here in the London office. We're both tutors. We're teaching through to the December sitting. Obviously part of this webinar is really just to help all, not just our own students, but students anywhere who want to know. Of course, you probably received this through from either our marketing team or the ACCA team. We're trying to give as much of our personal experience really here about how we can help you to sort of get through sort of progress in your studies. So the objective today is preparing for success, which is very broad, but specifically we want to talk about kind of like if you're at that pinch point where you're not sure what paper to select next, we want to give you a little bit of hints and tips about how to select that and where to go. And then secondly, the second half, we're really going to talk about anyone who is having to resit a paper, or maybe it's just a brand new paper, just really good advice about how to pick up the material and make sure that you're running into either the March or the June sessions, really. So let's progress on. Anything else I just want to cover off? Cover about Menti. As we go through, you can, like I said before, you can chuck any questions you like down into the chat panel there, but you will have opportunities as we go through the slides just to pop things in. So hopefully we should have a little bit of fun, which should be good. Right, okay. So for the people who are on, can you just let us know what sort of level you're currently working at? So if you have a look at your phone now, you should find that it's moved on to asking you a question. Hopefully it's a very easy thing for you guys to kind of tap through as you kind of go through. Fantastic, we've got someone at the professional level. This is quite fun, isn't it? I always love doing these things. Menti is something that we've been using for probably about the last year, but it really does help him with some of the interaction. We've got some of the knowledge level, fantastic. Some of the skills, super duper. Okay, so we've got a mixed bag today. That's really good. Okay, well that's great because we wanted to talk about all three regions area, but of course, in the spirit of trying to make things as interactive as possible, we obviously want to tailor it as we kind of go through. So fantastic. We will crack on. So sorry to keep asking more questions, but also just so that we understand demographics, so we again tailor it as much as possible. Can you let us know if you recently sat, or you don't have to even recently sat, when you last sat, how did you do? How did you go? How did things turn out for you? Because I know most of you will have received results just last Monday. We will be there. We were there talking to our students, weren't we?
Yep.
Talking about how things went through. So yeah, let us know how you're doing. So let's have a quick look. Any responses are there? Okay. Okay. Fingers crossed you guys can see that. There we go. Oh no. Not a good start. We've got some balance, got some mix. This is classic, isn't it? Okay, fantastic.
Excellent.
Well, that's really good. Like we said, the first half of this is going to be thinking about progression, preparing for success, like we said, about making sure that you're going through. But that second half, we're going to definitely be talking about how to kind of get yourself back on the horse and how to kind of pick yourself up. Because both David and I were reflecting this morning just about our own personal experiences. We both failed a paper when we were going through and studying. So we've been there, we've done that, we've had that emotion. So we'll hopefully share with you not just the things that we felt when we were students, which actually, to be fair, having taught now, I've got a much different picture on like how to approach things, which it would have been difficult at that point in time to believe. And I kind of wish that I'd could meet myself, that kind of time. So hence why we're here. We really want to just give back and make sure that you guys know exactly what we would have done differently, if that makes sense. So yeah, David, incredible knowledge on this. So this is good.
For those of you that are just coming in late, then if you may have to kind of go through some of the earlier questions kind of to catch up with us on Menti. So don't worry about those earlier questions if you just don't want to skip through them to get to where we are now.
Brilliant, thank you, David. And just as you see at the top of the presentation slides here, if anyone is just joining, if you just go to menti.com at the top, you'll see then you'll be able to put in your code and you'll be able to join in the fun, if that makes sense. Okay. So, jumping on forward, let's crack on. Just the last thing is just the last bit of advice is again, last question, sorry, for us to just understand a little bit more about you is just about sort of funding. So if you guys can just let us know what type of...
Love that first question.
So we got that, employer funded, fantastic. Any kind of like mix. Again, crazy bit, love this. This is fantastic. Okay, good. Employer funded, okay. It's kind of what we expected. The majority of people would be employer funded, but not strictly. If I reflect back on myself, I was employer funded when I was studying through, but I absolutely, when it was resits, I had to fund myself. So again, makes the decision more harder. For, of course it does because it's painful, but in any case. Right. Okay. Now, really, questions open to the floor. Before we go, myself and David, we've got an agenda that we've got loads of topics that we would like to cover. But again, to make this as tailored and as personalised to you, if any of you guys have got any burning questions about your study plan, now Dave and I have been fielding this from our own students this entire last week, so we've got plenty of things that to ask. But we've got our first question. That's fantastic. If you've got anything, I'm just going to give you just a minute just to pop up on screen any questions, and then if we don't kick off on them and start with them, we will certainly make sure that we try our best to cover them. And just so you know, if we don't cover anyone's questions today, we will definitely be looking to catch up with you later. So we'll have opportunities later for you to put in your email address, and we'll look to get back with you. Okay, well, we've got one question up there, and I think, here we go, we've got two. Fantastic. Okay, I think with either two, we can pretty much start with either. So David, if I just take the very first one here, so how many exams should I sit per year? I get this all the time.
So do I. There's I guess quite an old-fashioned view that when you're taking exams, you should be taking 2 at a time, or sometimes 3 at a time. And I think a lot of that comes from people that qualified kind of 10 years ago, when you had to do 3 exams in one go, and you had to do 2 exams, and you only had June and you only had December. Now we have 4 sittings a year, And to my mind, if I was giving a student a piece of advice, I'd be saying, take one exam every quarter. That's 4 exams over the course of a year. One in March, one in June, one in September, one in December. I think that gives you a balanced study plan across the whole year. So you're not getting really, really stressed around December exams or really stressed around June. You can spread your studies out. You can focus on one exam and one exam only to each exam sitting, which means you're going to be really, really, really well prepared for that one exam rather than worrying about having to balance your studies across 2 exams. So my general advice is 4 exams a year, one every single sitting. Now, what I then do is then speak to a student and say, is there any reason why you can't do one exam every quarter? And some common reasons people will come back to me with are, they'll come back and say, I can't do anything to the March exam sitting because I've got self-assessment tax returns I need to do at work. And that takes up all of January and I don't have time. I said, well, that's fine. If work life gets in the way, which it should do really, then you don't do that exam sitting. And then you look at, am I comfortable doing 3 exams a year and making my studies that bit longer? Or do I still want to do 4 and do 2 exams in December or 2 exams in June, when maybe your work life is a little bit lighter and you're able to devote your time to your studies? I know from your point of view, you'd never want to do anything in July or August because it's cricket season.
Exactly.
And so you wouldn't do an exam in September because you want to be out there playing cricket all summer, but you might do 2 exams in December because no one plays cricket in November.
Plus December, winter months.
Yes.
Jeez, it's all a bit cold and blustery outside. On that point, David, just to sort of think about, is there a limit to how many you would take at a particular sitting? Like, you were sort of mentioning like sort of spread it out, but let's say like I really want to progress, so 3, 4 to a sitting. Okay.
Well, the maximum you're allowed to take in any one exam sitting is 4. The maximum exams you can take over the course of a year is 8. Okay. Now, doing 8 exams in a year, I think is incredibly
gunning
hard.
For it.
It's achievable. People do achieve it, but it's very, very few people achieve it. And I think trying to achieve it with any kind of work-life balance is going to be near enough impossible. So 8 exams is very, very, very tough. I think 4 is manageable. If you're not getting study leave and you're not able to get that kind of support kind of like during work time, I think 4 is very challenging. But yeah, so I would aim at 4 unless you really want to push forward.
Thanks, I think that's fantastic. In terms of, I've just got some other questions up the top here. Should I resit now or move to another paper first?
In general, I would tend to say if you've just studied and you've just got the result and you've been unsuccessful, my view is to get back on the horse and attempt that exam again.
Like immediately?
Yeah, I think so. Now, there are things that get in the way of that. I know some people have already begun studying to the March exams and now they've had bad news about the December exams and they're thinking, do I continue with this thing that I've been studying for the last 2 months or do I go back and resit and put the new one on hold? I would tend to say that thing that's new, that's fresh in your mind right now, probably focus on that and maybe resit in June. But yeah, generally, if you've got, it also depends on your mark. If you've been unsuccessful with 49 marks, you should sit that exam as quickly as possible. Achieving 1 extra mark in an exam where you've got 49 is something that you should be able to do with some really focused revision and practice.
I think that's very well advice. I really reiterate that. Now, I think we're going to hit a little bit more about resets later, so we'll be able to pick that up again, but definitely sort of strike one there while the iron's hot type thing. Now, we've got some other questions here, some of them down in the chat panel here. We've got Bukola here. He's saying, how can he crush the tax paper?
Crash the taxpayer.
I think crush.
Crush the taxpayer.
I don't think he wants to crash through it.
I don't think anyone wants to crash an exam. So, by the tax, the UK tax paper, I assume we're looking at the skills paper rather than the professional paper.
Is that true, Bukola? You can obviously, whilst we're chatting away, please update us as you can see on the screen.
Okay, if we assume for now it's skills, and then if we get the answer that's professional, I could talk about that one as well. But the skills tax paper very much relies on your ability to calculate taxes quickly and efficiently. And I always think that the skills tax paper is the skills you need if someone comes to you and says, how much is my tax bill going to be? You've got to be accurate. You've got to make sure that the timing is right, the payment dates are right. So it's all about accuracy and being able to calculate tax liabilities very, very quickly. So the key is, do you know how to calculate income tax? Do you know how to calculate corporation tax? Do you know how to calculate capital gains tax? Can you do them quickly and efficiently? Some of the feedback that we're getting from students is that they're finding the Section C questions in the taxation paper and all those skills papers more challenging. And I think that a lot of people are focusing on Section A and Section B, which are short 2-mark questions, really, really quick fire. I think probably because it's easier to practice them at home. Because you can say, right, I'm going to do 15 questions, just bang, 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 do
rather
them.
than sit down and do it long.
Absolutely. And it's a bit of a shock getting into the exam and seeing those Section C questions. So I would focus on making sure that you can do a long question and calculate all those taxes.
Sorry, Mikael, I've just seen your motor sound there. It's fine, I've got you back, buddy. Just making sure we got that. Now, Sanat had a question here as well, which is just about time. Because, of course, in terms of that decision, let's say you want to sit for March, exactly like Sanat's saying here. Like, do you have time? I mean, how much time should you be setting aside? I mean, what are we talking? And let's make some assumptions here. So I assume here it's just one exam. So you're doing one paper.
So assuming one exam.
Yep.
My thoughts are that you should be sitting down today and saying, well, which exams am I intending to sit in March, in June, in September and December? So get your plan in place.
Fast?
Yeah, absolutely I would.
Yeah.
I think it's really important you set those objectives and you say, this is what I'm going to do, and then you work to them. Now, I think that the minute you finish one exam, so say you finish the exam in March, you should be thinking, right, I'm going to sit this exam in June, and now I start planning. I've got 3 months to prepare for that exam. One of the dangers is you think, I'm going to wait for my results to come out, and then you're automatically giving up 4 to 6 weeks before you start studying. So I would look at that 3-month program. I would expect people to be doing initially at least 10 hours worth of work a week. So whether that is kind of 2 evenings and half a day on a weekend, or whether it's a series of evenings, whether it's working kind of Saturday and Sunday for kind of half the day, that's the kind of time commitment I would expect per exam. In those 3-4 weeks leading up to the exam, it's going to go up to that. It's going to go up to maybe 15, 20 hours. That's the kind of workload that I would expect to be certain that you're going to get through. Some people it'll be less. There'll be some people that are going to pick things up very quickly. If you work in tax and you already calculate tax bills, it's not going to take as long. If you work in management accounting and you're producing budgets every week, then the performance management paper is going to be easy for you to prepare to than the financial reporting paper.
That is brilliant. Sonata, does that help answer your question in terms of the time taken? And whilst we're going on, I'm just going to pop to another one. Just start if you can have that. And Mikaela, I didn't ask you. Apologies but let us know if that answered your question too previously. Up here on the board, just whilst we're waiting, I can see another question here from Sonata. But just at the top, we've got another question on our main board here. It's just about the difference between sort of classroom and kind of online. If you have this difference. Because there's so many options out there. Or it seems, all the providers and things. Like, what should a student choose? That's the largest question in the world.
Absolutely, there are so many variables that go into making a decision. So one of them is going to be the amount of money you have. So and working within your budget, whether it's a budget that's been set at work, whether it's your own budget. Then I think it comes down to learning styles and how you feel that you learn best. Now, if you come to a classroom, then it depends how much you respond to someone standing up and teaching you and telling you what to do, when to do it, how to do it. So it's very much driven by the lecturer. Online study gives you amazing flexibility. You can study whenever you want, however you want, and it can fit in with sometimes very busy lifestyles. Also depends on how you respond to online study. Are you the kind of person that can sit down in front of a screen and watch online lectures and learn from them and engage online? I know loads of people do. I know loads of my friends.
And that's about control.
Yeah, absolutely. They'd much rather have that control and be able to interact with people through a screen than make their way to a classroom. I know other people that say, I couldn't learn unless there was someone in front of me telling me what to do.
No, that absolutely makes sense. Sonata has just put in a nice little cheeky one there. It says, how hard is F4 law? I know that's not going to be applicable to everyone, but if we can have a quick question there, David.
Okay, so
Quick answer for that one.
my knowledge of F4 law extends to the English paper. So assuming you're doing the English law paper, I think the F4 paper is really nice. It's one that I teach myself, so I know a little bit about it. It's
Does it go back to those things about your skill set? You know, like how well you get on with that type of material. I mean, some people are numerical, some people are discursive.
Absolutely. There's lots of law that you need to learn. You need to learn lots and lots of principles of law. You're not being asked in the law paper in ACCA to be a lawyer. You're not being asked to make decisions. You're asked to understand the legal framework that as accountants we operate in. So the questions that they ask you are going to be questions about things like contract law, because as accountants we deal with contracts every day. You know, we pay based on contracts, we receive money from clients based on contracts. There'll be elements of company law in there. So it's important you understand the principles. They're not going to ask you to formulate, you know, a legal position to take in front of a judge. So the questions that you get are going to be very straightforward. There's a lot of learning in law. There's very, very little application now. So if you're happy learning lots and lots of principles, you'll be absolutely fine. If you prefer learning a method and crunching lots of numbers, then it is going to be more difficult for you.
That makes sense. Sonata, you I'm loving your questions here. So, quick one there. It's just what's most mistakes students do whilst preparing for the exam. So, if you're preparing for exam, do you know what? I'm going to hold that question because we'll pick up some of that back when we get onto resits later. So that actually be quite relevant there. Before we move on from this section, because I've got a couple of things that we'd hope to kind of like cover off, and these are common things that come up when people think about paper selection. Is if you're at that professional, I know we've got someone on who's at the professional stage. Is there any papers that you think you should do first? If you're, let's say, transitioning from the professional into the skills into the professional, is there any papers that you would advise that you do first? Because you've got the options there.
Absolutely, you've got. There's. If you're starting under an apprenticeship to start with, then you have to do the strategic business leader paper effectively as the end point of your assessment. So you have to do that one last. So for some people, that decision is taken out of their hands. That strategic business leader paper, I think, also makes sense to do towards the end, because there's a lot in that paper that's around kind of commercial awareness. Do you understand why businesses do the things that they do? And having more experience of working in finance and more experience of other exams helps you towards that paper. So I like that paper being one that you do kind of towards the end. There are pros and cons to all the others as to which one you do first. The optional papers quite often lead on from the skills papers. In fact, they all lead on from the skills papers. So if you've just studied, say, the skills level tax paper, you've got very good knowledge of how to calculate income tax, corporation tax, and all the rest of it. So it almost makes sense to say, let's do advanced tax, where we use all that knowledge, but this time to give advice. So if you've recently done something at skills, I would look at which of the optional papers that relates to. Is it one that you're intending to do?
I'd agree with that.
I know that some of my colleagues that teach the advanced audit paper are probably shouting at the screen right now, because the audit paper, you're going to be asked about auditing processes around financial statements, and some of the reporting standards that you'll be asked to audit around are going to be covered in the corporate reporting paper at the final level. What that does mean, if you're doing audit, is you're going to have to actually look at some of that corporate reporting material before you can actually address all of those audit questions. So it does mean that if you do the advanced audit paper first, there's slightly more work if you haven't already done that strategic business reporting paper. However, the flip side is that when you get to SBR, which is a tough paper, if you've already done audit, you've already seen a bit of the syllabus. So it kind of helps you there. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts there, really. But I would look at the papers you've done before, and that will help you make that decision.
Brilliant. No, that's good. Okay. Right. I think we've pretty much answered all the questions that we've got there. I'm just going to ask you guys, because I'm always a little bit conscious about engagement. And just for those guys who turned out a little bit late, and for those guys right at the start, if you just look at your screen, especially if you do this on the computer, I've put in some useful links on the bottom right here. So if you want to go and look at any of our sort of timetables, pricing, or any just like who we are and what we're about. It's all down there. But also, if you wanted to vote on your computer screen, it's just down there. But also in the bottom right was the more important thing, is I have left a handout for you guys to leave this with. So if you were kind of making notes or doing anything like that, you can see down the centre, hopefully you can see I'm making some notes for you on your behalf, just covering the things that we might not have been in that handout, just any extra, because of course we plan for some eventualities and all of them. But in the bottom right, there's a handout there. So if you are making notes, definitely you can download that now and have a little look through that. But let's progress on. So we've talked about which paper next. I feel like we've covered quite a lot of ground there. In terms of, for you guys, I'm moving on again because we've only got 45 minutes with you today. As a sort of point of you guys being on this this webinar today, we really wanted to make sure that we could give you as much help as possible. So me and Dave put our heads together and we thought what would be most useful to people is really just our advice, really, if we could give anything away. On your sort of Menti screens now, and for those guys who can't get access to Menti at the moment because, for example, you're on your mobile phone or something similar, this actually Menti works beyond the webinar, so you can fill this in later, if that makes sense. So when you get back to a computer screen, you can actually go and log in and just use the same code. You just need the PIN code, and we'll share that with you afterwards. But if you have a look at the form that you've got on your computer here, we're simply asking, if you want us to get in contact with you, put in your name, put in your email address, let us know what papers you recently sat, and where your nearest centre is, because we can get people from that centre to come and talk to you, because they, obviously everyone, I certainly would like that personal touch, and that's what we offer is something different here in First Institution anyway. That's what we sell. So just let us know if you want anything, because me and David will happily sit down and write with you and just talk to you about next steps, because everyone's different. Everyone's got a different got a situation in. So I'll leave that just there for just a few minutes. Another question I had for David, actually, whilst we're talking about best papers, one of the things that people sometimes also ask is, do certain papers work together better? So if you are doing 2 papers to June, to December, which is not what necessarily we'd recommend now that you can do 4 sittings, but in terms of if you were doing 2, and I think that any sort of little snippets you can give people as advice?
Yeah, so I said in the perfect world, I would spread straight across the year. Most people's worlds aren't perfect. So you are likely to have to do 2 papers together. Now there are, at the skills level, there are certain papers that have got overlap. So I tend to think things like the F9 paper and the F5 paper, or the old F9 financial management and performance management. There is crossover between those 2 exams, but they are tough exams. There are some papers that I know a lot of people kind of swear by doing together. So the financial reporting paper and the audit paper, they do work nicely together. If you're creating financial statements in one exam and then you're auditing financial statements in the other exam. That pair, as a pairing, is nice because one of them is very computational and the other is very discursive. So there's a balance between different styles. It's more difficult now, but I have heard in the past people talk about doing the law paper and the tax paper together, because the law paper contains things around employment law, and you see the same material in taxation as well. So there is some crossover there. However, with the law paper being kind of an on-demand computer-based exam for most people, probably not so relevant. I'd rather do the tax paper, finish it, and then do the law paper immediately afterwards, to kind of maybe fit in a gap of studies.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, brilliant. Okay. Now, guys, hopefully you've had some time to sort of fill in bits and pieces of Menti. If you want our help, and of course if you don't, that's absolutely fine. We're going to progress the slide, so if you haven't filled that in, it's absolutely fine. We don't need your data for any other reason other than just to give you a hand. But if David, you were to sum up about sort of everything we've spoken about there in terms of which paper next, if you want to leave a memory with people, what would you say?
In terms of?
Which paper should I do next? So I am going, I've progressed through, let's say, from the knowledge level. I'm looking at the skills. I've got 6 papers, and I'm just like, where should I start? What would be your best advice?
My best advice is to look at your own strengths. And for me, when I finished the knowledge level papers, I then looked at the next set of exams in front of me and said, which exam do I think that I will perform best at? And for me, I started my employment working in personal tax. I love maths, I love numbers, I love doing calculations. I chose the tax paper. It just fitted in exactly with my skill set. And I did that because it got me confident with the ACCA exams.
We're nerds, we're absolute nerds. I'd say exactly. We're all similar, but
If on the other hand, I worked in a small practice, and I prepared small companies' financial statements. I would almost certainly do the FR paper first, because all of those principles of double entry accounting. Yeah, absolutely. You know, if you work in management accounting, I would choose one of the performance management paper or something like that. So it comes down to where your strengths are. The other thing I would look at is ask someone that's been through it as well.
Yeah.
You know, ask one. If you've got a colleague that's already 3/4 of the way through ACCA, just sit down and say, what were the exams like? And you know, they'll tell you. If you haven't got anyone at your work, you know, phone me up. You know, and just say, I'm really struggling to make a decision.
Such a great point,
you know, you know, can you tell me what's in each of these exams? Because I know when you first look at them, you know, you don't know what the difference between financial management is and financial reporting. You know, because it's your first steps into accountancy. So asking someone else that's got the knowledge, that's been through it, that's seen the exams, you know, that's what we're here for. That's what your colleagues should be there for as well.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you very much. Again, use this as much as you can, guys. I mean, it's one of those things. And like I said, if you want to get in touch, please do. Now, we're going to transition into sort of resits. So now I just want to make this clear. I've put resits up on there, but you know, this is not just about people resitting. This is people sitting any paper, because the advice that we give here is without saying it's generic, it's just about good preparation for exams. And really, we'll probably lean on a lot of personal sort of experiences here about the mistakes that we kind of made as students and what we see our students do, regardless, you know, like how much we tell them. But let's kick off with again, in the spirit of trying to make this as interactive as possible. If you guys have any immediate thoughts, now earlier I've sort of saved up. We've covered a little bit already, just about next. So about when, one of the answers earlier to Sonata was just about when studying. The advice, generally speaking, was strike when the iron's hot. So I've made some notes in the middle there for everyone who's kind of going through that. But if there was any other questions you guys had that you want us to talk about in terms of resits, please find through, either in the chat panel at the bottom we're here or up on Menti. Either way, that would be really great to hear. So I'll leave you just a few minutes to have a look at that. And again, all of this stuff, by the way, it's covered. You know, we've given our kind of our main thought process down in the kind of like the handout, which is down in the bottom hand right corner. So about sort of like when, where, and so on. But if anyone's got any specific things they'd like us to go through, that'd be great. Okay. Well, in the meantime, whilst some of the questions, if they are going to come through, well, here we go. What have we got here? How can I get over failing? Fantastic. Okay. So where do you start? Like if you were like, let's say last Monday, you came in, your results came in, and absolutely you're someone who you had a fail. How do you pick yourself up? Like, what do you do?
It's really hard. It is really, really tough. Especially for a lot of people, you get to this level and it's the first time that you've ever failed anything. You know, because you know people that have failed other things have fallen by the wayside, and you're still there. And then you're unsuccessful. And with ACCA exams, you know, the pass rates, you know, being kind of like 30-40% for some papers, lots and lots of people are unsuccessful. So I guess the first thing is to recognise that, you know, you're not alone. You know, the people that got 50% plus are actually in the minority of people that sat most of those papers. One of the things that I would look at is, you know, look at those objectives that you set. If you have got your plan of, I'm going to do these 4 exams over the course of the next year, you know, just look at that and say, is that still achievable? Am I going to move? You know, I've been unsuccessful in one exam. Do I actually want to say, I'm going to do that exam now in March, and I'm going to push on the other exams that I'm going to do? When I failed my exam, I failed an exam when I was doing my degree, and I took the exam in May, June time. The next available time I could resit the exam was in 12 months. So it was a 12-month gap between failing the exam and being able to retake it again. And it took me 6 months to actually recognise, you know, what I needed to do. I knew I had to resit it. I would sit down with my books doing exactly the same work that I did before. And most of that was writing down the notes that I'd already made again and again and again, hoping that I was going to learn enough to be able to sit an exam. And it reached about December, and I thought, I'm not going to pass this exam. I'm doing exactly the same thing that I did for the last time I did it, and I'm not getting any better. So, you know, what do I need to do? And I recognised I needed to change my approach. And what I ended up doing was phoning up someone from a different university, or phoning up, it was an exam that I failed. It was a part of my maths exam. I phoned up someone in the theoretical physics department of Cambridge University, and said, I need some private tuition. Do you know anyone that's quite good at general relativity?
Yeah.
And they put forward someone, and I went to see this guy once a week, and he gave me one-to-one coaching, and then it completely changed my understanding of the subject.
Yeah.
I went from thinking, I don't know if I'll get through this exam, to walking into the exam completely confident and knowing I was going to pass it.
Yeah.
And it was just absolute night and day. But it took me 6 months to recognise that I needed to do something different.
Yeah.
And I think that recognition, I think looking at why you failed the exam and how close you were, if you're 49%, you're virtually there. That's a few tweaks.
Yeah.
I was a long way short of passing, and I had to take that recognition myself that what I'd always done wasn't good enough. Yeah. And I needed to change my approach. So is it I need to do 10% more work and I pass, or is it I need to radically change the way that I do things?
Yeah.
And I think too many people are sitting exams, writing out a set of notes rather than practicing their exam technique.
Yeah.
And just changing the type of work you do can make a massive change to the marks that you have.
So a typical student, again, because this isn't just about failing, of course, this is just about how you approach it, because this is what I see as a tutor as well. Students carrying through sort of bad study practices, basically, where it's worked the whole way through their life, A-levels, university, wherever they've gone in terms of their studies, and they're like, if I rewrite my notes, if I just make sure I know everything, everything's going to be fine. And of course, these exams are so much more practical and so much more applicable that question-based part of it just becomes so much more. But in terms of coming back to the question, getting over the failing, it comes a little bit like, you were saying it took you 6 months, and within that 6 months you learn how to kind of like change your study methods. But it's a little bit like grief, isn't it?
Yeah,
in terms
absolutely.
of like getting over that kind of like, firstly comes like denial. They're wrong, it must have got the wrong result, and then it kind of goes through those stages, doesn't it? And it's I guess it's when you get to that stage where it's kind of like you realise that it might have been something that you did, your approach, where things start to change and start to move on. Fantastic. We've got some other questions in here. Sonata's sort of saying here, which exams are the hardest? I think we'll come back and we'll address that towards the end. I think everyone will probably say, the professional stages, on the whole, of course, because of the module system, are the hardest. But in terms of which one will probably be a personal. But sticking on the kind of the resits sort of theme, how should you study for a resit? You spoke about in terms of doing your.
Again, it's going to be different for everyone. The common theme for preparing for any exam is practice the exam questions. Practice doing exams. Put yourself in the position of being in the exam. Sit down for 3 1/4 hours with a mock exam. Do the exam to time. Get it marked. Self-mark it. Review what you've done. Do it again. So when you walk in the exam, it's not a shock. When you walk in the exam, you say, I've sat down for 3 1/4 hours before doing an exam, and I know I got 60% that time. You get used to it, you get comfortable with that. If you're spending all of your time learning the syllabus and not practicing, you go into the exam, it's a real shock. I didn't know they'd ask me a question that way. Or, after an hour and a half, I ran out of steam because I was tired, or my wrist started hurting, or I couldn't type for that length of time. It's little things like that can cause the difference between 1 or 2 marks, which could be enough just to get you under that pass mark, or just over the pass mark if you can actually adjust to it. So practicing to attempt the exam. Again,
is this for resitters as well?
Everyone.
Or is it more just everyone?
Absolutely everyone. Yeah, absolutely.
So if I said research, like let's say I got my result on Monday. What should I be doing now? You're saying just go and let's say start on the papers.
It very much depends. So if you were unsuccessful and you got 12%, your syllabus knowledge isn't good enough. So you need to understand the subject before you can practice. If you got 48%, your syllabus knowledge isn't that bad. So just some tweaks, a bit of exam technique, doing a question practice. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to get students to do, say, a 20-mark question. So then get that 20-mark question marked and say, right, you got 7 out of 20. Okay, it's not quite good enough now. I'll show you how to do the question, so how to produce a model solution. And what I want you to do is make a note of how you would get 1 extra mark. So instead of saying, I want you to go from 7 to 20, no one can make that change overnight. But can you get 1 extra mark? And if you do 10 questions and get 1 extra mark in every one of those 10 questions, you're changing a 17-mark question into a 17-mark question. You're changing something that is an exam that's not particularly great, that's going to fail, to something that's a clear pass. If you do that again and again and again, week after week after week after week, you go from 49% to winning a prize.
In terms of again, sticking with the theme of how, some students here who might have, let's say, failed an exam, they got the results, like I said, on Monday potentially, and they've already paid significant amounts to like go through. Again, going back to you've got loads of options.
Yeah.
You know, should you be, and again, going through the line, you said do something different. You know, or think about how you can do things differently.
Think about how you prepared. Be honest with yourself. You know,
but would you choose other things, like, you know, kind of like, would you go for, let's say, an online product? Would you go for a classroom product? Like, what should you do, or should you try and start it on your own? Because if you reset and you only got 48, like what? Yeah.
It is a case of being honest with yourself, and why didn't you pass? So once you've got over the grief, sit back. And I know when I failed, it's because I did the wrong work. I'd reached a point where my understanding had reached its limit. Things that worked for me before no longer worked, and I needed help. And I needed to study in a different way. I needed someone to give me that coaching. Why did you not fail? You know, why were you unsuccessful in your exam? Was it that, I went to classes, but I didn't do any of the homework? Well, maybe doing those practice questions would have got you over the line. If you did everything you felt you could, and you got 30%, and you're now thinking, well, I did everything that I could, maybe then you need a different approach. Maybe then you need to do something slightly different. So, I would be honest as to why you failed. And if you failed because you didn't do enough work, you need to do more work. If you failed because that study approach didn't work for you, look for a new approach.
No, that makes absolute sense. Absolute sense. Now, we're coming around to sort of towards the end of the webinar. In terms of looking at other questions, we haven't got as many today. That's absolutely fine. In terms of, to answer Sonata's question here, which I had a quick go, in terms of the hardest ones, which are the hardest exams, if you could give Sonata some advice on that, what would you say?
Well, very simple. The hardest exams are the professional papers. The ACCA qualification is designed to get more difficult as you go through. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that the professional exams would be hardest for you. So I taught a student who qualified 2 years ago, and she sat 9 ACCA exams, and she failed the first 9 papers that she took.
Wow.
First 9 exams. So I think it was 2 exams, she did multiple resits, but 9 times she got a notice from the ACCA that she failed. And the exams that she was unsuccessful were the law paper and the financial management paper. So she failed those 9 times in a row. She did exactly as I said. She looked at why she failed, and she felt she needed some kind of change, and that was why I started to see her. She then passed F4, she passed F9. Every exam after that, she passed first time. So,
and why do you think why did she do that? What was it? Is it a combination of what you've already said in terms of the thing?
From her point of view, sheer determination. I've got nothing but admiration for this lady. She, I couldn't have suffered 9 setbacks in a row and still carried on and taken those exams. So that's just incredible determination. Honesty from her point of view, that something had to change in the way that she studied. Okay, I think that was admirable of her to recognise that. And then sheer hard work. She did. For me, she was the model student. Everything that I asked her to do, she went away and did. And she didn't question it. She just said, right, I'm going to try this method. And that's, for me, that's a perfect student. Someone that you say, right, I want you to do 3 exams worth of question over the next 2 weeks. They go away, do it, submit it for marking, get feedback, act on that feedback.
Okay, right. Well, we're coming around here. I'm just noticing the time. Little sort of last few thoughts and bits and pieces. I think in terms of what we wanted to do today, obviously, is we wanted to give you as much advice as we possibly can in terms of which paper next, and obviously how to sort of pick yourself up if you've failed a paper. Now, in terms of, again, another thing that we wanted you guys to be able to do is, you'll notice on the screen here, we were again thinking about what best would be helpful. And for those students who, it's not even if you've failed a paper, but if you're sort of looking for a new provider or different things, and you just wanted to experience what we have to offer, but we were specifically thinking about the students resitting. If you wanted to have a quick look at our recorded tuition material, so we have what we would call an online recorded product, which is the entire tuition, and it's been all the recording videos have been made for each sort of chapter and throughout our course notes. And a little reminder, if you didn't see from the front screen, we're a platinum sort of provider for the ACCA, which basically means it's the best sort of level you can get. Again, if that makes sense in terms of our relationship and the way that we present our information based with the ACCA and our close ties with them. So we want to give you this offer. Now, as you can see on your Mentee, hopefully you see we basically asked you, if you want access, please give us your email address, give us your course that you want to be attached to, and we would love to get in touch with you and just obviously set you up so that you have sort of temporary access, sort of a couple of days to look through and just see what our content is like. Because even at the very least, it would just mean that you can brush up on any areas and sort of, because especially the March exams aren't far away now, so it gives that kind of like you can see what you'd be getting, if that kind of makes sense, before sort of looking to purchase. But I'll leave you guys just to fill that in just ever so slightly. I can see that there's been a question coming on here. Sonata, fantastic. Thanks for popping that in. And again, like I said, the Mentee sort of feedback form will be open. So if you next go back to a computer, you can always go and sort of revisit this and enter your details, and it gets captured. That's absolutely fine. But in terms of wrapping everything else, I think the biggest question that we've got to ask you, people who are here on this webinar, is what are you going to do next? Okay, so we know from our experience that going back and reiterating a little bit what David said about in terms of approach, it's not like practice makes perfect, because that again is what people typically do. They throw themselves into trying to learn everything in the study manual or the course notes. It's perfect practice makes perfect, and so it's the way you study it. And I think from here at First Intuition, what we do is we're all about the personal touch. We know our individual students, we know names, how they perform, because we do our utmost to obviously review any work they've got. We spend our time walking around the class. We really try to engage. I hope you get a feel of that a little bit today, because obviously we're trying to make this as personalised as we possibly can, because that's what we do. So if you were to sort of think about and consider it, sort of working with us and want to be a partner as we sort of help you through your journey, please get in contact. We'd be more than help, even if it's just to understand what we're doing. But may I just recommend as well, I've given sort of put a handout up on the screen. Again, this will be available after the event, so we hope to be able to send out the recordings and provide the handout, and of course access to the Mentee for anyone who didn't quite capture this webinar. But just get in touch if you've got any questions. David, have you got anything else to add before we go to a Q&A session?
No, I think we've covered a lot of the things that I wanted to talk about. I always think that having that plan in place for when you're going to be sitting exams is important. I also think one of the things that I always like to do when I sit down with a student is say, right, what's your plan in terms of sitting the exams? So you're going to sit this exam in March, this exam in June, this exam in September, this exam in December. I then ask the question, what are you going to do right now? So what action are you going to take from now? Now, whether that is actually tonight, I am going to sit down at 7 o'clock and I'm going to do half an hour's worth of study, and then I'm going to do 20 short form question practice on that particular syllabus area, just making it a positive action towards that goal of passing the exam in March or passing the exam in June.
Right. Again, I'm so sorry to do this for those guys who've been online, and I really don't. We didn't design this to deliberately sort of antagonise you or things, but we do want to make sure that we answer your questions. So. If you have any final sort of like questions, I think both from myself and David, we want to just say thank you to everyone who's been here. My final slide is our email addresses as a little bit of a reminder. But again, if you're still working with Mentee, if you've got any questions, please throw them up. Otherwise, bear in mind we're over time anyway. We wish you the best of luck in your next studies to March or June or the future. And our door is always open if you have anything coming forward. Thank you ever so much for the person who's put us there. Thank you, it's really helpful. It really means a lot to us. But yeah, if anything we can help, just let us know. But we will certainly just wait for we'll be here for a few minutes just to answer any questions. But for the other guys who need to drop off, thank you for your time. And we'll say this has been Christian Pamworth and David Malthouse. Fantastic. Our pleasure, Sonata, by the way. Thank you very much. We'll take down your email address and we'll make sure we get in touch.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Pleasure, Bicola. Good skills, mate. Good luck.
Thank you.
Crush that tax exam. Okay. We'll still be around here and just look at the chat panel. Again, goodbye from us. Here's our details. Don't forget the handout, and good luck in the upcoming exams. I'm going to freeze the webcam, so it's a goodbye from us, and look forward to catching up with you in centre, obviously, shortly.
Yes.
No problem, Ricardo. Yeah, just if you filled in the feedback form, fantastic. We'll get through to you. Otherwise,
Just drop us an email.
Drop us an email. Just straight in. We'll deal with it. Goodbye from us.
Bye bye.